Najran, anywhere in Jaziratul Arab. So this group was, this delegation was made up of a group from that tribe, from that group of people from Najran. And they came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they were dressed and adorned very nicely with silk clothes and gems, and their rings in gold and silver, studded with, all sorts of very, very precious gems. So when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw this, he refused to talk to them. He refused to speak to them, and they came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam not on one occasion, but for 3 days. According to one riwayat, they came to him 3 days in a row. Each time Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would turn his face the other way. According to another riwayah, they came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in front of him. He turned his face away. They came the other way. He turned his face away. They came then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whichever way he turned, they would come that way, and he would turn his face away. And they understood that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't want to speak to them. So they got up, and there was one person they knew very well. That was Uthman ibn Affan Radiallu Anhu. And they said, "This is what's going on. He sent a letter to us. He invited us. We're here now, and he's not willing to talk to us." So Uthman ibn Affan Radiallahu Anhu looked them up and down. He said, "That's the reason. Look at your clothes. You're wearing silk. You're wearing all this haram stuff. He's not going to want to talk to you in this state." So they went back wherever they were staying and changed their clothes and wore very simple, coarse clothes like the clothes of monks, according to this riwayah. And they came back. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam starts talking to them, explaining to them the haqiqah and the truth of Islam. And he says, "You people know, because in your books, and you are from the people of the book, you are Christians, you know that there is a last Nabi coming. And you have all the different signs that help you identify him, and you see all those in me. There's no reason for you to disbelieve any longer." So they were not very keen to accepting Islam. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam received an ayah in Quran Kareem in Surah Baqarah, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked him to call for mubahala. Mubahala basically means like a court case, but without any witnesses. It's a type of court case where there's no witnesses. Both sides will make a claim that I'm on the truth and you are on falsehood. And if I am right in what I say, then may the curse of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be upon you. And if I am false and you are true, may the curse of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be upon me. So he made this offer according to the ayah of Quran to Banu Najran. This, the hukum I've received. And in this, part of the mubahala was that he had to call, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had to bring his family with him, because the mubahala would include both families. Families from their side and families from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's side, so that the la'na, when it would take place, whichever side it took place on, it would happen to not just the person himself, but to the whole family. It was to show significance of the matter, right? That I'm putting not just my own self on the line to establish that what I claim to be is the truth, but even my family, right? So when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam called them for mubahala, one of the people, his nickname was Aqib, or it's not, sorry, his nickname, his title was Aqib. He said that I don't think it's a good, he went back to his people and he said, "We don't think it's a good idea to mubahala with you. We don't think it's a good idea to mubahala." One second here. This is what he said. He said, "Ya ma'ashar al-Nasara, O group of Christians, you know that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a Nabi Mursal. وَلَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ بِالْفَصْلِ مِنْ خَبْرِ صَاحِبِكُمْ. And he has come to you with clear explanation of the truth. وَلَقَدْ عَلِمْتُمْ أَنَّ مَا لَعَنَ قَوْمٌ نَبِيًّا قَطُّ فَبَقِيَ كَبِيرُهُمْ وَلَا نَبَتَ صَغِيرُهُمْ وَإِنَّهَا لِلْإِسْتِئْصَالِ مِنْكُمْ إِنْ فَعَلْتُمْ. You know that if any nation curses a Nabi of Allah, as in we will be doing in this mubahala, then we will all be destroyed. Our elders will be destroyed. Our children, next generation will be destroyed. And the whole of our tribes will all be uprooted by the curse of the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam upon us, and our own cursing ourselves by making a false curse on the Nabi of Allah. It would rebound back onto us. فَإِن كُنْتُمْ قَدْ أَبَيْتُمْ. If you refuse to do mubahala, and that is my opinion that we should not do it, my mashwara is, and I think you should agree to this, is that why don't we do one of two things? Either we accept Islam, because we know he's right. After all, he's making such a big claim and there's truth to his words, and we pay him jizya. A certain amount we agree upon that we will give to him on an annual basis. Or second option is, what was the second option? Either they accept Islam and there will be no jizya, or we stay on our deen and we pay jizya. Okay? فَإِنْ قَدْ أَبَيْتُمْ إِلَّا إِلْفَ دِينِكُمْ. If you want to stay on your deen, وَالْإِقَامَةَ عَلَى مَا أَنْتُمْ عَلَيْهِ مِنَ الْقَوْلِ فِي صَاحِبِكُمْ فَوَادِعُوا الرَّجَلَ وَانْصَرِفُوا إِلَى بِلَادِكُمْ. Then I suggest you pay jizya. You want to stay on your deen, that's fine. Pay him jizya, but don't get involved in mubahala with this person. You're going to be in big trouble. They all agreed. So they came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam the next day after they had done this mashwara and consultation with their elders and other group from the people, delegation. So they said, قَدْ بَدَا لَنَا أَلَّا نُبَاهِلَكَ. It's clear to us that it's not a good idea for us to move to mubahala with you. They didn't discuss with him why. فَحْكُمْ عَلِينَا بِمَا أَحْبَبْتَ. Why don't you appoint somebody from amongst your group who you trust with all your heart, and we will make a deal with you that we will pay a certain amount to this person every year. He will be your agent, your representative, and he will bring that amount that we agree upon every year from us and bring it to you. Somebody who you completely trust. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam agreed. Now, included in this agreement was the fact that they were rejecting Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a prophet of Allah, because in the whole reason why they were willing to pay jizya was because they were not willing to leave their deen. Otherwise, if they accepted, there's no need to pay jizya. So they're basically saying, we're not going to accept you. We want to stay on the religion of our forefathers as Christians, but we'll pay you jizya. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, you don't want to accept Islam, that's your choice. Okay, pay jizya. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam specified a certain amount that he wanted, and they agreed to it. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, لَأَبْعَثَنَّ مَعَكُمْ رَجُلًا أَمِينًا حَقَّ أَمِينًا. I will send to Banu Najran a person who will fulfill the right of being the most trustworthy person in the world. Meaning, he fulfills the definition of trustworthiness. You want to see a trustworthy person? This person is that person. So now all the Sahaba of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam heard this, because they're sitting in the gathering while this whole discussion is taking place between Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Banu Najran. So the Sahaba are raising their heads to see if Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam will actually point towards them. Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu says, never in my life, this is hadith in Bukhari, he says, never in my life did I ever want or seek amarat, meaning a high position, except on this one occasion. I wish that Rasulullah would choose me as the Amir, so I could go and I would attain that status of being what? The Amin, the most Amin, trustworthy person. This is the only time in my life that I wanted Imara. That position of being a representative of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not because he wanted to be a representative, but because he wanted that guarantee from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because if Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that the person I'm going to be choosing is going to be what? The most trustworthy, then indeed that person is the most trustworthy. It's like a certificate from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a guarantee. Not just for the people of his time, but people for all times to come. Everyone in this ummah. So, Hadhrat Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu is basically saying, in other words, even when he was appointed by Abu Bakr Siddiq to the mantle of Khilafah after Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu was to pass away, he didn't like it for himself. Because the only time where he did want it was at this occasion. Which tells you that the Sahaba were never after dunya, never after status, never after position, never after power. What were they after? A guarantee that they will be saved. Because a person who is going to be called Aminu Hadhil Ummah by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is guaranteed Jannah. That's a guarantee of Jannah. He's a trustworthy person. Right? And by the way, that also was the nickname and the title of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that Quraysh gave to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, being Al-Amin and As-Sadiq. So in a way, there was a relation in terms of character between this person who Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would appoint and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself, because this was one of the outstanding qualities of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, being Al-Amin. And now Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying, I'm going to choose someone who's going to be just like me in being what? Al-Amin. And if Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a Nabi of Allah and he has this quality and he's appointing somebody who's going to have the same quality, for sure he's a person who's guaranteed Jannah. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is looking at the Sahaba and they're all raising their hands, say, you see me, do you see me, do you see me, right? And then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Qum ya Aba Ubaid ibn Jarrah, stand up. He didn't just tell him, oh, Abu Ubaidah, come here. No, Abu Ubaidah, stand up. So letting everybody know who he really was. And one thing you need to know about his personality, about Abu Ubaidah radiallahu anhu, was that he was a very quiet personality. Very quiet. He didn't speak much. There were some Sahaba who talked more, right? I won't say they were talkative, but they talked more. They're more social, okay? Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu was a very social person, okay? Abdurrahman bin Auf was a very social person. Abu Ubaidah radiallahu anhu was quiet, more introverted. So, he was not going to be the type of person who's going to, and actually none of the Sahaba would do that, right? But Abu Ubaidah for sure was a person who's never going to come out and let himself be known to anybody. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wanted to make it known to everyone who he really was. So he tells him to stand up in the presence of this gathering of Sahaba and the delegation of Najran. And then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam announced in front of everyone, Hada aminu hadhil ummah. This person is the Amin of this ummah. Okay. Now last week we mentioned one thing, and that was, does that mean basically that none of the Sahaba had this quality? Of course not. What it means is that this was Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah's outstanding quality. They all had the good qualities. Whatever qualities you can think of that you would expect in a great person, the Sahaba had those qualities. But there were certain qualities that the Sahaba stood out for. Right? So one Sahabi stood out in one specific quality. There was another Sahabi who stood out in another specific quality. For example, Abu Bakr Siddiq was known as what? Siddiq. That doesn't mean that he was only the veracious one, but also he had all the other good qualities that a great person should have. Right? But that was his outstanding quality. Right? So this was Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah radiallahu anhu's outstanding quality. This is what made him stand out the most from all the other Sahaba as being Aminu Hadil Ummah. So now Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah radiallahu anhu's responsibility from this point on was to go to Najran every single year and to collect that jizya that had been already stipulated and agreed upon between the delegation and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he would collect it and bring it back. It's because of this title, Ibn Kathir rahimahullah mentions that When Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu was about to pass away, and I've mentioned this many times, he chose how many people? 6 people, right? To choose the next Khalifa. All of those 6 people were what? From the Ashara Mubashara. Abu Ubaid ibn Jarrah was not from among them, was he? He passed away already. He had passed away. He passed away in the 18th of Hijrah, right? During one of the expeditions to Sham in the plague of Amwas. Okay. So he had passed away before that. But Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu said, this Abu Ubaid ibn Jarrah radiallahu anhu is the greatest person for this position. I wish he was alive. Ibn Kathir says because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had given him the title of Aminu Hadil Ummah, that's why Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu said that forget these 6 people. Even though they all were Ashara Mubashara themselves. If Abu Ubaid ibn Jarrah was here, I wouldn't choose these 6 people to choose the next Khalifa. I would choose him right away. Immediately, without question or consultation with any group. On the basis that if he is Ameen of this Ummah trustworthy, and I place the Ummah in his hands, he's going to fulfill the trust. Because we think of trust as giving somebody's money. But trust is also when you give somebody in the hands of someone else to take care of them. So for example, the wife is placed in the hands of the husband. Why? By the family. Now he's Ameen to take care of her for the family. Right? And you have children. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed you with children. You are Ameen of those children. You have to return them in the exact same state that you gave, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them to you. Or in a better state of Iman and Taqwa and innocence and purity. Right? So, Ameen is not limited and restricted to just trusting in regards to wealth, but also trusting in regards to people. So, he's saying he's Aminu Hadil Ummah, which basically means that he was the most worthy of Khilafah, because if I had entrusted him to this task, he would make sure he fulfilled the rights of this Ummah. Then I don't need to worry about choosing anybody else as the next Khalifa, because he's got the guarantee from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Nobody else had that guarantee. They're great people, they're promised Jannah, but they didn't have that guarantee of Hada Aminu Hadil Ummah. So this title was inclusive of a lot of other good qualities as well, and titles. Of all other good privileges that came with it. Right? The privilege of being worthy of Khilafah and holding high positions, even though Abu Ubaid ibn Jarrah himself would not have liked that for himself. Right? But the fact that he was Aminu Hadil Ummah entitled him to a high status in many different areas. Anyhow, when Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu sent him out to Sham on an expedition, and there's one whole section, inshallah, which is probably we're not gonna be able to start it today, but one whole section of his life that deals with his time in Sham, because a good part of his life was spent in Sham just fighting against the Byzantine. Not a good part, but a couple of years. So while he was there, there's a story of his trustworthiness that shows us why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave him this title. So the people of Hims is a city in Syria. Abu Ubaid ibn Jarrah and his force, they conquered it by sulah, by agreement. So they didn't have to fight for it. The people surrendered and they said, listen, we'll pay you this much jizya, and all we want from you is for you to protect us. That's it. So Abu Ubaid ibn Jarrah radiallahu anhu agreed. The agreement was that they would give immediately, ajila means right after the agreement was made, they would give 70,000 dinar to Abu Ubaid ibn Jarrah radiallahu anhu, And Abu Ubaid al-Jarrah would send that on to Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu. And then they would pay jizya every year after that, annually, ala kulli muhtalim, for every youth, every young person who reached the age of adulthood, for 4 dinar every single year. So anybody who was at the age of puberty had to pay 4 dinar per year, 1 year after paying this initial amount. This was a part of the agreement. So they gave the 70,000 dinar. But the problem that happened is that soon after they conquered Hims, through Sulah, through a truce, an agreement, the Battle of Yarmouk was about to take place. And the Battle of Yarmouk is one of the most decisive battles that took place between the Muslims and the Byzantine forces. The Byzantines sent all their equipment, all their elite forces, the biggest contingent that they could ever send was sent in the Battle of Yarmouk. So Muslims needed to collect and gather all their forces to fight against the Byzantine, because this was the last chance of the Byzantine to win and to secure their power over Sham. Otherwise, if they lost Yarmouk, they've lost Sham. So they were putting all their power and all their effort and all their money behind it. And the Muslims knew it. So now, Abu Ubaid al-Jarrah radiallahu anhu had to collect whatever forces he had in Hims, collect them and take them to Yarmouk because of the Battle of Yarmouk that was about to take place. They needed as many army men, as much manpower as they could get. So he sent a person by the name of Habib ibn Maslama. I don't know if he's a Sahabi. There's a great Sahabi by the name of Muhammad ibn Maslama. He may have been his brother. Maybe not. Allah knows best. I haven't done tahqiq on that, but it seems that it may have been. But he's not mentioned as a Sahabi according to this historical narration. So now, when the Muslims had to leave and join the other Muslim forces that were there in Yarmouk, ready to fight against this huge army of the Byzantine, Abu Ubaid al-Jarrah sent Habib ibn Maslama to go to Hims, and he said to them, لا ينبغي لنا إذا لم نمنعهم أن نأخذ منهم شيئا. It is not permissible for us to take anything from them if we cannot protect them, because the agreement was that they would give them protection in return for the 70,000 dinar, and then annually 4 dinar per muhtalim, right? Every single year. So Habib ibn Maslama gathered all of Ahl Hims in their church. They were Christians. And he said, listen, Abu Ubaid al-Jarrah made an agreement with you. And the agreement was so and so. Problem is, we cannot fulfill our part of the agreement now because there's a battle that's about to take place and we need our forces there. Therefore, we're going to give you your 70,000 dinar back. Have you heard this ever happen in the history of mankind? We're going to give you your money back. So now, these Christians of Hims are saying, Raddakumullahu ilayna, may Allah return you to us. May Allah bring you back to us. وَلَّعَنَ الَّذِينَ كَانُوا يَمْلِكُونَنَا مِنَ الرُّومِ, and may the curse of Allah be upon those who governed over us from the people of the Byzantine, even though they were Christians. So they preferred the Muslims to govern them over their own Christian people. Why? Because they saw justice. They saw trustworthiness. Right? This was trustworthiness. Trustworthiness means fulfilling an oath or a promise that you made to someone. Right? And then they make another comment. They said, Walakin, Wallah. They're telling Habib ibn Maslama, Wallah, Lo kanuhum, if this same situation had taken place, and in your situation, the Byzantine was in your situation, and they had taken 70,000 dinar from us, do you think they would give it back to us? No way. Ma raddu alayna, they would never return it to us. Bal ghasabuna, they would take it from us, and they would not fulfill their part of the agreement. Wa akhadhu ma qadru alayhi min amwalina. In fact, if they could get more of it, they would try to take more. May Allah return you to us. How do you think Islam was spread so fast? Because it won the hearts of the people. There's a book that I read a couple of years ago, and I recommend everyone read it. It's written by an Orientalist. The book itself is not very good at all. So you're saying, why are you telling us to read it then? The book is not good, why should we read it? Because it tells you how much the historians, non-Muslim historians, admit that Islam spread at breakneck speed. Okay, meaning so fast, within 100 years, they had almost conquered 3 continents. Spain, Europe, Anatolia, Turkey, Asia, of course, Jaziratul Arab, the East, Iraq, and North Africa. 3 continents within 100 years. And not only did they conquer it, but they were able to retain it to this day. In fact, because of Islam, the whole map of these 3 continents changed. Now, you go speak to an Egyptian and you say to him, oh, you're not Arab. He said, how dare you say such a thing to me? But the truth is, he's a North African. He's not an Egyptian. He's not an Arab. But they pride themselves over being Arab. In other words, they pride themselves over being from another culture. That was not their native culture. So how were the Arabs able to so successfully win the hearts to this day that they're proud to be considered Arab-speaking people? Even if they're not Arabs. You go to Iraq, the same thing, right? Of course, Jaziratul Arab all spoke Arabic. But you go to Libya, they speak Arabic. Sham did not speak Arabic. All the people of Sham speak Arabic. Jordan did not speak Arabic. The people of Jordan speak Arabic. People of North Africa did not speak Arabic. People in Morocco definitely did not speak Arabic. Okay? Tunisia, Morocco. Now we consider these Arab countries. They were not Arab countries. So they've been really confounded and baffled by how Islam was able to not just conquer, but win over the hearts of the people so quick. And I just want to read to you the blurb of that book, which will tell you how these people admit and confess that indeed Islam spread, and somehow, miraculously, they were able to maintain and retain whatever they conquered. How they did it, their excuses and justifications for that are ridiculous. That's why I say the book is ridiculous. It'll just tell you how they don't want to admit that a miracle took place, that Islam was just, Islam was true, Islam did win the hearts of the people, and that's how they were able to conquer the lands and keep them. You remember Alexander the Great, right? What did he do? He did the exact same thing. He conquered lands in no time, but he wasn't able to retain them. Within 100 years after he conquered the Persian Empire, Persia was gone from his hands after he died. There's no signs of Hellenistic or Greek culture anywhere in Persia anymore. I don't think it was even 100 years after he died. It was gone. They got rid of it. But here you go to Iraq, there's Arab-speaking people and they're Muslims. And they even identify themselves as Arabs, even though they originally may not be Arabs. And even if they're sitting here in our crowd and they heard me say this, they may not even like it. But it's the truth, right? That is a testimony itself of how Islam won the hearts of the people. So this is what he says. This is the blurb in the beginning of the book, at the end of the book, sorry. He says, today's Arab world was created at breathtaking speed. In just over 100 years following the death of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in 632, Arabs had subjugated a territory with an east-west expanse greater than the Roman Empire. And they did it in about 1/2 the time. So what the Roman Empire was able to conquer, and the Roman Empire was huge, but it took them a long time. The Muslims were able to conquer more land than the Roman Empire did in 1/2 the time. Today's Arab world was created at breathtaking speed. Okay, well, I already read that part. And they didn't want to have, by the mid-8th century, Arab armies had conquered the 1,000-year-old Persian Empire, reduced the Byzantine Empire to little more than a city-state based around Constantinople, and destroyed the Visigoth kingdom of Spain. the cultural and linguistic effects of this early Islamic expansion reverberate today. Meaning, linguistic meaning, the fact that people are still speaking Arabic. The people still identify themselves with the same religion that those people who conquered them came with, which was Islam. But if you read the book itself, I've closed it halfway through, because these people are not going to admit that Islam spread through justice and through people like Abu Ubaid Jarah Radiallu Anhu and his trustworthiness. Right? The Sahaba, their character was such that wherever they went, what did they do? Their character thus won the hearts of the people. Right? There's a beautiful hadith by Abu Ubaid Jarah Radiallu Anhu about the Muslims of the last era. It's a hadith in Sunan al-Darimi and it's also in Musnad Ahmad, but I'm going to share that with you after the break. So we're going to have a 2-week break. So 2 weeks after, inshallah, the Wednesday after the 2 weeks are finished, we will have our next session and then we'll share with you that hadith that Abu Ubaid radiallahu anhu narrates from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam about the last part of the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Jazakumullah khair, ahsan jaza. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.